Hello, and today we are going to read 30 nurses' real-life ghost stories. Don't let them take me. The best I have heard is from a nurse who said that one night she was floated to oncology at the hospital she used to work at. She was given a patient who was passing away and had been unconscious for several days. At one point during the night, the nurse went into the room and the patient was at the top of the bed and looked at her and said, "Don't let them take me." The nurse was freaked out and asked her who was going to take her, and she said, "That black thing up there," and pointed up in the air. The patient died within minutes. So what was it that killed that patient? I don't know. Was it the Grim Reaper or was it something worse than that? The empty room. I heard an interesting story a few weeks ago. Part of the hospital has been rebuilt and faces onto our unit. A nurse, doing something near the window, looks across and sees two people moving about in one of the clinic rooms. It's after hours and the clinic is shut. She called a colleague over who also saw these two people. They call security, who go over and check out the room. Nobody is there. A while later, the nurses again see these two people moving around, so they call security. This time, the security guys split up. One stands with the nurses, while the other one went over to the clinic to check again. The scary part of this is that the security guys were talking on the radio. The one in the clinic states that the room is empty, but the other security guard standing in our unit with the two nurses could actually see these two people standing right beside the security guard while he was talking. That's really interesting. It would be one thing if it was like different people could see them and the other people couldn't, but it was actually the location. So what would make them be visible from a distance, but not when you're there? It's really interesting. The sound of children playing. My mother-in-law has been a CNA for 15-ish years, and like many new CNAs, one of her first jobs was at a nursing home for the elderly. Soon, before patients at that nursing home passed, they would complain about the children outside being noisy in the dead of night. There were also patients that would comment on the children playing outside the window in the daytime, when clearly there were no children to be seen. She has plenty of other weird stories, but that one is my favorite. Straight to hell. Okay, not my story, but something my sister witnessed when she was a med student at a level 1 trauma facility. Guy comes in from an MVA, motorcycle versus truck. She said he was a Waffle House hash brown, sliced, diced, and chunked. The guy is able to talk at the beginning, drunk, cussing the nurses and docs, trying to help him. Not a nice guy. They end up intubating the man to preserve the airway, and the guy is going downhill fast. He codes, but they manage to bring him back. Suddenly, the guy comes completely to, rips out his tube, grabs my sister's hand, and lets out this breathy little scream. "Don't let me die. I'm going to hell. Please don't let me die." This freaks out everyone, including my sister. The guy says he woke up in hell, on fire, and keeps begging someone to check his feet for burns. Nobody could believe he pulled out his tube and was talking. Despite everything they did, the guy still died. My sister said they were all freaked out about it for weeks. The man sitting in the corner. Okay, this totally creeped me out. I worked at a small, privately owned nursing home. A lot of the patients have been there a long time. Naturally, I was silly enough to take the night shift for 2 weeks right out of school to cover the night nurse who was ill. This place and these old hallway lights that you had to stick a paperclip in this slot on the wall to turn them on and off. Real safe, right? There was one at each end of the main hallway. I carried the paperclip on my key ring. So there I am one night. I come in 11, take a report, set up supplies, etc. I shut out the lights. The only light is for the lamp on my desk and the eerily red exit sign that casts this red wash all over the walls. Anyway, I'm standing at the med cart, stocking med cups, and I feel a whoosh of air. It's winter and no windows are open. I hear a rustling sound and think that it's the resident in number 3, who is restless sometimes at night. His room is about 6 feet from the med cart. Now, being the brave nurse I am, LOL, I decide to check to make sure he's not trying to get out of bed. I go over to his room and find that he's sound asleep. I do a bed check and everyone is sleeping and accounted for. The CNA is in the TV room doing flow sheets. I continue on with stalking. A little while later, I hear the noise again and this time see a figure out of my peripheral vision. They say spirits present themselves in your peripheral vision. Pass me by in room 3. This time I'm not so brave. I take the CNA in with me, who now thinks I'm nuts. We creep into the room and find the patient sitting up in bed having a conversation with someone who isn't in the room. When I ask him who he is talking to, he tells me the man who is sitting in the chair in the corner. Naturally, there's no one in the chair. The aide and I settle him down and leave the room. At report the next morning, I'm telling the nurse about what happened. Before I could say who PT was talking to, she said, the man sitting in the chair in the corner, right? Creepy. Later, I had talked to the usual night nurse who said it happened all the time when she was on. More than one patient had the same experience. I never did get the name of the mysterious man in the corner. In any case, that was the end of my night shift stint. The Grim Reaper. Intensive care nurse here. I have many stories ranging from sheets being ripped apart to old women in rocking chairs, but the one who haunts me is the time I think I actually saw the Grim Reaper. It was 1999, late in the day. It was summer and turning dark in a busy 12-bedded ITU in London. I was in charge and at the nurses' station. There were a few people milling around, but less than during the day. I looked up to see this man opening and coming through the double doors into the unit. What was so striking about him were his clothes. He looked like he had been picked straight out of 1974 and dropped into 1999. He was wearing brown cord flares, the platform shoes men wore then in orange, yellow, and brown check shirt, with a cream and brown patterned tank top over the shirt. He was white with shortest brown hair, not quite 1970s, and about 30 years old. He walked calmly, like he did this all the time, towards the bay of patients. Not recognizing him and knowing he wasn't a relative of our healthcare person, I said, "Hello, can I help?" He looked at me directly, nodded as if to say hello, and carried on walking. I watched him, and he stopped at the end of the patient's bed and turned to look at them. He never touched the person or did anything other than look at them. This unwell but stable patient suddenly and unexpectedly deteriorated. As the staff went to assist, they all acted like they didn't see him. He turned around and as calmly as he came in, he left. I never saw what direction he went as I left the nurse's station to go and help with the patient, who ultimately, despite our best efforts, died. I spoke to some of the staff later on about the 1970s visitor, and no one else saw him. 17 years later, it is still vivid in my mind. Something evil. One night, I was caring for a dying male patient. He was scared, and I spent quite some time with him, trying to calm and reassure him. Eventually, he calmed, and I left the bedside and went over to the nurse's station, which was about 15 feet away. As I sat down, I glanced over to him, and there was a black shape standing over the bed, looking down at the patient. I was terrified, and am sure it was something evil. Again, creepy. And that's also weird since the other, story was talking about the Grim Reaper and the Grim Reaper not looking anything like we actually think of the Grim Reaper looking. So it's like, what is this dark figure that is over these patients' beds? I really have no idea. The little girl with the ribbon in her hair. We had a black girl about 10 in ICU that was severely injured in a car accident. Lots of brain damage. She didn't die there, but was moved to another facility after weeks and weeks. After that, I know of 3 older black males in their 50s that, if they were even mildly sedated, would ask about the little black girl with the ribbon in her hair who was sitting at the foot of their beds. One guy said, "She asked me how I was doing and then got up and walked that way," while he was pointing towards the second floor window. He paused. A wide-eyed look came over his face. And then he said, "But I guess she really couldn't have left the room that way, huh?" That's interesting. They're talking about seeing her when they're a little sedated. And they're talking about walking out the second floor window, which makes me think of a personal story. So my mom was, I think this was ICU actually, or it was after she got out of ICU and they moved her. I can't remember where they moved her to, but we went to go visit her and a nurse came in. It was either she came in or she got out. But anyways, my mom ended up telling us that she had believed that there was a door that the nurse had come in through that was just her window. And this wasn't even a window that opened. It was just a window that could see out. And she would not take our word for it that there was no door there. She made us actually check behind the couch to prove to her that there wasn't a hidden door that went nowhere, because it was literally the wall to the outside. But I just find that interesting that my mom also thought that someone had come in through the window. And I don't know. I mean, we just thought that she was so, under meds that she thought that the nurse had come from a different direction, but who's to say that she did see the real nurse and not a ghost? She didn't see this when we were there even. It was, I think, her just talking about earlier and saying that there was a door there. But anyways, the ghost hunt. During clinical at nursing school over the last summer, we went to an older hospital that had been converted to a rehab unit after a hurricane. It is a 3-story facility, but only the top floor is used. The elevator would stop on the second floor every time, which was being used only for storage. Being inquisitive, I asked the staff and found out that supposedly the second floor is haunted by an old ghost doctor who worked and died on the unit. I just had to investigate. I grabbed a classmate, and upon stepping onto the vacant, darkened unit, a call bell was on. We walked in and turned it off. What we weren't told is that the second floor was the old OR floor. It was pretty creepy rocking around the old surgical suites. Well, once we had made an entire trip around the unit, we came back to the nurses' station, which was adjacent to the elevator. As we rounded the corner to face the elevators, the doors to the elevator flew open and all the call bells went off, as if to say, "Get out." Kitty cat. I had a patient who was CMO and quite obviously very close to dying. The week before, my best buddy cat, Pippin, had died, and I was pretty broken up about it still. That being said, I walked into her room and she said, "Oh, you brought your kitty with you?" I blink at her and say, "What?" Mind you, this was the first time I'd had that patient, and I hadn't discussed my cat with her, having cats, or even liking them. Her reply, "Your kitty, it's right by your foot." I get that frisson, that momentary shiver in my soul, and ask, just for kicks, "Yeah, what color's the kitty?" She says, "Black with some white." Pippin was a black tuxedo cat with white paws and a white bib, and the patient died that night. Now, I know this probably isn't related at all, but that actually makes me think of Dr. Sleep with that cat that would visit the patients before they died. I just find it interesting that that patient died the same night that they saw the cat. That was obviously a ghost.